Hello and welcome to today's very special webinar. My name is Lisa Stewart and I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator here at 12D Solutions. Today's presentation, What's Coming in 12D Synergy 4, will be presented by 12D Synergy Technical Lead Richard Stollier, who has 18 years of experience in software engineering and technical architecture, and 13 years as a software engineer with 12D Solutions. 12D Synergy 4 is due to launch at our technical forum this July, and today is just a sneak preview of just some of what's coming. We're excited to announce our new advanced data management solution for BricsCAD, AutoCAD and Civil 3D. The new features will include an enhanced plugin for ease of use, management of DWGs, XREFs, images, PDFs, point clouds, sheet set manager and drawing register. Civil 3D users will experience all of these functions, plus the addition of data shortcuts. 12D Synergy 4 will also introduce Spatial Search, which will allow users to visualize their jobs on the Spatial Search map, as well as a brand new workflow engine to take your project and document management to the next level. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and hello to everybody. So as Lisa mentioned, I will be taking you through what's new in 12D Synergy version 4, but before I get started with that, I thought I'd just take some of you through the history of 12D Synergy, what it is and where it's come from. So 12D Synergy is a data management system for the engineering, surveying and construction industry. It provides a single source of truth for your data. It helps you find data and documents faster and really allows you to improve your data integrity and control the workflows when working on your projects. It helps you to centralize your data and where it's backed up to, and it should be noted it is a standalone product to 12D model. It handles lots of different file types. It handles emails, Word documents, Excel, PDFs, and really any document type can be placed in there. It also can handle and manage 12D model projects, AutoCAD, Map 3D, Civil 3D, MX, XPSWIM, TubeFlow, and lots of other software packages. It is largely data agnostic. But it should be noted that it is the only data management system on the market that can handle 12D model data out of the box. Just a little bit about the history before we get into version 4. In 2006, we began work here at 12D Solutions on a new source control system for 12D model, which is a significantly complex product. In 2011, we began to convert that into what you know as 12D Synergy today. So as a data management product, it was already quite mature before it began to get a bit of a facelift. In 2014, at our user conference, we released version 2, and this was really all about managing 12D model projects, office documents, and a bit of task management. In 2016, we released version 3, which brought on board the file replication service, which allowed people to much more easily work share between offices in different regional areas. And currently, version 3 helps manage data for over 3,000 users. We have a number of different companies who've come on board over the last few years across design consultants, surveyors and contractors, with companies of varying sizes up to your large design consultancies down to your small surveyors, as well as some government groups as well. Some of the major projects that have used 12D Synergy include Toowoomba Second Range Crossing in Queensland, the Ipswich Motorway Upgrade, West Connects in New South Wales, North Connects, the Bruce Highway Upgrade in Queensland, the M1-M3 Upgrade, the North Canterbury Transport Infrastructure Recovery over in New Zealand at Kaikoura, and the Mount Messenger Alliance. Alright, so let's dive into 12D Synergy version 4 and we'll talk a little bit generally first about what we've put in there before we dive into some details. So really, we've been working on 12D Synergy 4 for the last 2 years. Developers have been really hard at work putting these features together. It's currently in beta, and as Lisa mentioned, there is a scheduled release at the end of July. So today I'm just going to be giving you some brief highlights to show you what's in there. So our primary aims for version 4 are about optimization, about making it faster, how to make it more usable, easier for new people to pick it up and for our existing users to get their work done more quickly. We've also covered a lot of general user feature requests that we had over the last couple of years, and we've added some new major features, including some reporting capabilities, integration with CAD, a workflow engine, and spatial search capabilities. And I will go through each of these as we go on. So in terms of our general features, we've added lots of little UI tweaks around the place for a much better experience. And largely this is just about reducing the clicks. As developers, we tend to do things a few times to make sure that it works and then move on. But our users are the ones who are doing it every day. And we like to listen to their feedback when they tell us it just takes a little bit too long to get through these processes. So we spend a lot of time making sure it's much faster and much easier to get through day-to-day work. We've also removed the workspace numbering, and for those of you who are using 12D Synergy version 3, you'll know about the workspace number, which is used to separate out users on the same machine. This can be problematic for non-12D Synergy aware programs. So we've managed to do some technical magic and remove that while still allowing multiple users on the same computer. We've also added a new active item to let me say it again. We've added a new item to the Active Items window to show your recently opened items. And this just allows you to move through your data more quickly, especially if you're working on multiple projects. So you can very quickly see the last set of documents that you worked on. The Add Files button, which is used to add new files into the system, now shows a recently used list, which comes from Windows. So if you've been working on something somewhere else outside of 12D Synergy before you've put it in there, it will now show up. And that just brings it more in line with the Windows experience. There's a generally better layout when configuring. We were starting to get lots of tabs along the top of the window, and that was just confusing for people to set up folders and jobs. So we've done a bit of a reconfigure on how it looks. So you can see down the left-hand side here, we've grouped things a bit more logically. It makes it much easier to get around. We've added a client-side API, which is in .NET, so if anyone has programming skills, you can actually customize your own client-side application. So if you need to put a bit of a different front end on there, maybe wrap up some processes creating jobs, you can write your own tools. Now you can define your layouts for search results, and this is reasonably important. In version 3, you could define the way certain folders look. So if you had an email folder, you could show only the from, to, subject, etc. in your columns, but if you did a search for emails, everything would show up, which wasn't that useful. So now in version 4, this can be configured centrally to make sure that only the right attributes show up for different sets of files. We've also added pre-compression when uploading data. So this can be really useful for larger data sets, especially when you're working out of the office over a slower link, maybe the public internet. Let's say you're uploading a large 12D model project. In all cases, 12D Synergy will only upload the changed data, but that changed data can still be significantly large. So now you can opt in to compress it first, which can significantly reduce your time. It's also really beneficial for data formats like TuFlow, which can be very large. You can compress it down very small and speed up that upload process. There's also a progress bar now for all uploads and downloads to show you overall transfer progress. And we also now have custom templates for the publishing and WebDrop web pages. Just a screenshot of the new progress bar, which is just one of those things that's a little bit obvious in hindsight, but it's really helpful to understand how long your check-in or check-out is going to take. Now, in terms of optimizations, the team really has been hard at work to increase the speed of the software. So what we've been working on in practical terms is reducing how chatty the client software is with the server, and also how much the server talks to the database, which is central to the way 12D Synergy works. Ultimately, what that means is that there's less load on your infrastructure, which is really important, so your servers are working less hard, and that amounts to a generally faster experience. So just moving through the tree, editing files, everything will be much faster. We've added some new email functionality. You can now bulk load your emails from Outlook. So if you're a new user coming on board, you can basically select a folder and just say, I want to upload all these emails straight away to a job. Previously in version 3, you had to do this in small batches. It could be quite time consuming, and this will work on public folders as well. So it makes it really easy to bring on historical data. Within 12D Synergy, there are also lots of manual email touch points. Say you want to issue via Outlook, or just email a contact, maybe send an email to your entire job team, or you're just doing a right-click send to mail recipient for a particular file. These would all just open Outlook, which is great, but it would open a blank window and you'd have to type up an email. So now you have the capability to define manual outgoing templates that you can choose when creating these emails. So you can make sure that all your pro forma stuff is in there, any fields that need to be automatically filled out from attributes, your logos, all that sort of stuff. It's really just about making sure that all your company processes and document formats are being followed. In terms of 12D model management, we've now added 12D model project templates, and these operate a little bit like the job templates. The idea is that you can predefine all the different files for your different 12D model project types. Maybe you're doing a drainage project, you've got a subdivision project, whatever you need. You can have all the local working folder customization set up, your views, everything you want, and based on your attribute choices, the correct 12D model project will be created. You can also define in the administrator ignore lists for 12D model projects and managed folders. Some programs like 12D models will output lots of temporary files, and you don't always want to push this back up to the server. So now, or previously in version 3, this was hard-coded and we had a number of different things in there, but we can't always keep on top of what different products are doing. Maybe you've added some macros which have some outputs that you don't want to include. This can now be defined centrally in the administrator. Also, just some basic usability. Now when you open 12D model projects, it will automatically check it out instead of just asking you the additional question. Most of the time, people just want to check out a 12D model project. Yes, you do still want to be able to open it in read-only, and that is an option on a drop-down, but now for the 99.9% of the time you want to check it out, that's what it does. We also have a cached customization mode, which is, I think, probably one of the most important 12D model features. In version 2 and version 3, you could tell 12D model to look at your customization in 12D Synergy, and 12D model has a very rich and complicated customization environment. So 12D Synergy would say, all right, well, before 12D model goes and opens toolbars.4d or symbols.4d, we'll go and check, we'll make sure it hasn't been updated on the server, and if it has, we'll download it. Now in practice, that's a great idea, but it's quite slow. And largely that comes down to the way different applications talk to the network. So in version 4, we've introduced a new mechanism for doing this to speed up the whole process. It'll actually happen right at the start. It downloads all the customization that needs to come down, which means all that customization is then read locally from the local workspace. You still get the latest copies of the data, and you still only download what needs to be updated. And we can take advantage of the fact that 12D model only reads these files once. And if you change them, you have to restart 12D model anyway. So it is a huge speed improvement and makes it much more practical to put your customization in 12D Synergy and have your audit control and history. We also now provide a rollback or capability to extract versions of single files from your 12D model project history. And this is quite important. If you wanted to go and get a single version of a historical MTF file in version 3, you had to roll back your entire 12D model project to a previous version, which could be a considerable download just to get one small file. So now you can actually just take one out, save it to your desktop, have a look at it, and then bring it back if necessary. We also have the capability to offline many. So offlining is the process of saying, I'm going to go offline, I'm going to be disconnected from the 12D Synergy environment for a while, and I want 12D Synergy to take my 12D model project out of the environment and bring down any shares with it. So now with version 4 offline many, you can actually do that with multiple projects, which allows you to keep those sharing relationship between them and still work on them and bring them back online together. We also have the ability to check in many. In version 3, we had a checkout many, so you could check out more than one project at a time, but you still have to check them in one at a time, which was a little bit time-consuming and painful. So now version 4 takes care of that for you. In terms of issuing and transmittals, you can finally delete issue sets and types. We didn't allow that in version 3. Now it is an administrative operation in version 4. You don't want everybody being able to delete this sort of data, but we do recognize that it's important to be able to delete some of this stuff from time to time. You can also notify users of issued file sets, which is reasonably important. So a lot of the time you might have your engineers putting together your issued data sets, and then somebody else within the organization is responsible for issuing. So now you can tell someone that this is ready to go out the door. And you can also attach a cover sheet, which is obviously required most of the time. So this is a screenshot of the cover sheet that can be included in your emails that go out or as part of your published file set, and this can come out as HTML or PDF. It's fully customizable. You can put whatever details you need in there, put your company logo and so on to make sure it conforms to your standards. We also have a contact list capability. So typically when you're doing issuing or you're publishing data, you tend to send it out to more than one contact. You'll send it out to many contacts, and you'll probably do it many times over the life of a particular set of drawings. That can be really time consuming because you have to pick each contact one at a time. So we now define globally defined contact lists as well as job-specific contact lists to make that process much easier. So instead of just picking 10 users, you can define that once, and then, as the screenshot shows, you can go to your contacts list for the job and just pick that particular contact list, and everybody will receive their issue. We've added more functionality for naming rules, which is obviously really important in the engineering world. We now support zero padding in your file names, which is pretty critical for engineering drawings. So, for example, you might want to make sure you've got 4 figures. Also in version 3, if you had naming rules that involved attributes, you ended up having to double enter them, which was obviously error prone and time consuming, so that process has been combined to take away that unnecessary step. And we've also introduced a document type counter or plan numbering, and this is best described with a screenshot. So you can see here we've got some DWGs, and there are a number of different attributes which end up making up the file name. But you can see here we've got, say, like a drainage concept design drawing, we've got an earthworks drawing, geometric concept again, geometric drawing, and for each of these different types, which is defined by their document type and the subdiscipline, the number changes. So you can actually have very specific counters even in the same folder that relate to the different types of documents and drawings and files that you're going to have. Now, 12D Synergy has a very comprehensive, very complex and rich permissions environment. It gives you a lot of control over who can and can't have access to data. So, you can inherit from jobs and folders and all sorts of things. You've got group permissions and role-based permissions, and this all merges together, and that's great. It gives you real fine control, but in version 3 it could be problematic to then discover why someone didn't have access to something. You could always find out, but it involved a lot of clicking, a lot of investigation. So we've now added a permissions explainer tool, and that really helps you see very quickly why someone does or doesn't have access to something just by maneuvering very quickly through a tree. It's very similar to some of the permissions explanation tools that are available in Windows. In terms of user and group management, you can now add users to multiple groups at one time, which previously was a bit time consuming for some of the IT administrators in the background. You can also define the groups that a user should belong to at user creation time. So again, just wrapping up that process to reduce the number of clicks it takes to bring a new user on board. And there's also options to send out invitation emails. So you can define one central email that can include links to download the client software, links to manuals, any internal company processes for using 12D Synergy, and that can be sent out as soon as the user is created in the system. There's also much more information at a glance when editing users. A lot of the time when you're editing a user, you're really doing it just to find out a little bit more about them. What groups are they in? What modules do they have access to? So that is now available from a search. And finally, you can actually automatically set up groups to use a file replication server. In version 3, users had to opt in to the file replication server they wanted to use. Now in version 4, the administrator can say this group, say the Manila group, must always use the file replication server in Manila. We now have import and export capabilities as well. So in version 2 and 3, you could archive data sets that weren't being used. And this was great because if, let's say you had 5 years of a project and you had lots of working data that you didn't really want to store on your hard drives, your main server hard drives anymore, you could archive those out and put them into long-term storage and bring them back if you needed to, but it would free up space on your hard drive. But this didn't really bring in metadata. It was just about the disk space itself. So now you can actually export whole data sets, including that metadata, which you can bring back later. So if your company policy is actually when a job is finished, you have to export it and then purge it out of the system, you can now do that because you can bring it back if you need to. Or you could give it to a third party, and that's really useful for joint ventures because you might have lots of different groups of companies coming together on one project, on one server, and at the end they want to take their data home with them. In version 3, you could do it, but you would lose the metadata. So now in version 4, you can actually package all that up and take that home with you. And that can include, if you want, every version of the files, all the information about why they changed, who changed them, and all that metadata that's included in 12D Synergy. All right, in terms of reporting capabilities, which is one of our more major features in version 4, we have a few new things. Look, in version 3, you could report anything you wanted as long as you could program those reports yourself, which practically really didn't happen. So now we're shipping with reports out of the box. There's lots of different reports, and some of those include things like the changes of files over time, user activities and logins and licenses, job status and workflow updates, progress over tasks for particular jobs. And as I mentioned, there's a lot more. And we can ship these out of line. They're not part of the core product, which means that as we add more reports, you can take advantage of those without requiring a full server upgrade, which is obviously really important. We've also added dashboard gadgets, which is a really nice way of getting a quick at-a-glance view of what's going on in your jobs when you first open them up. So they look like this, and you get lots of different types of gadgets as well. So task progress, task status for a project, file changes over time, file charts. I think there's probably at least 24 gadgets, and the list is growing, and we're always keen to hear what sort of information people would like to see. And like the reporting engine, these can also be customized. If you do have .NET programmers in-house or connected to your business, you can write your own very easily. Some of the reports I talked about are shown here. So this is just a job overview. It shows all your attributes, the status of the project overall, and the file changes over the months. We can also get user reports, so you might see the last 10 things a user changed and their most popular jobs that they've been working in for a particular time period, and again the files that they've worked on over time, 12D model projects, and so on. What makes this really powerful though is the report scheduling feature. It allows really flexible report generation. All those reports can be generated on a schedule. So you might say, look, every month I'd like to set out a graphical set of charts by email to everyone who needs to see this information. Or maybe you want to email all the jobs that are currently in review, and you want to send them to all the relevant project managers for those jobs. So you get a lot of capabilities there. You can define whatever schedule you need. In terms of CAD, we've got lots of goodies there as well. So in version 3, you could use CAD, and we had plugins for AutoCAD and BricsCAD, but they were very limited. We did basic XREF tracking from DWG to DWG, and that meant that if you had XREF tracked your DWGs and you moved one around or you renamed it, it could track that for you and you wouldn't lose or break your references. And we had the simple ability to insert XREFs from 12D Synergy within BricsCAD or AutoCAD. The problem here was that you had to do them one at a time, which again was very time consuming. So in version 4, first of all, there's now automatic installation across BricsCAD, AutoCAD, Civil 3D, and other flavors of AutoCAD, including Map 3D, Mechanical, Architecture, and Plant 3D. And again, that means as soon as you install the product, if you open up one of these AutoCAD, BricsCAD products, you can see the ribbon in there. It'll be working straight away without having to fiddle around and load things yourself. We've added lots of new buttons to the ribbon, and I'll go through what each of these does. So we've got things like open from 12D Synergy, save as into 12D Synergy, import blocks from 12D Synergy. Reference types, we've got lots of new reference types being handled now. So not just DWG, but images, PDF, point clouds, and data links for the Autodesk products only. You get notifications when references on the server change, and this is pretty important because you want to get that bubble popping up in AutoCAD that says, look, somebody else has changed this reference. Maybe you want to update it. You don't always want to update it, but you've got that option too now. You can check out and edit your reference DWGs inline. And there's a bulk reference manager, which means you can make edits to all your references really quickly rather than having to do it one at a time and in a 12D Synergy context. But more importantly, we're trying to use AutoCAD's and BricsCAD's dialogues for references where possible, so it's very familiar. And I think this is a good opportunity for me to say that we aren't trying to change CAD users' workflows. The CAD users know how to use these products. What we've done and what we've introduced is really about how to get data in and out of 12D Synergy and make that process possible. There's also now a reference graph in 12D Synergy, so if you do have lots of references, you can see how they all connect together. It gives you a general overview of how the pieces of the puzzle fit together. And you can use this graph as well to check out those particular drawings, to go and get more information or to navigate to them. Although it doesn't show it here, attachments and overlays will also be visualized differently, so you can see the different types of references that are happening in the system. In terms of Sheetset Manager, you will get an automatic update of the DST file when it's changed on the server, and it will prompt you for check-in and check-out of the DWGs as you move through the sheets in the sheet set. You can also import sheets from 12D Synergy as you go. We also have added some functionality to support the drawing register. I mean, everybody who uses CAD and is plotting with CAD is using something like this. They have an Excel spreadsheet with lots of information in there, and this is the stuff that ends up in the title blocks in their drawings. So we had lots of people say, look, how can we do this with CAD and 12D Synergy? So we've got a couple of options in there now for you. So first of all, these title blocks tend to be across multiple layouts within your DWGs. So 12D Synergy can detect and automatically import layouts from your DWGs and create all the relevant attributes that you need. And then you can edit those layout attributes directly from 12D Synergy to update your drawings. Or you can edit them in AutoCAD and then push them back automatically to 12D Synergy. So you've got the capability to edit in either place and keep that data integrity. This is what the editor looks like. It's a bit of a table editor. It appears down the bottom for a particular DWG, and you can move through that like Excel, copy, paste, drag and drop, and so on. But a lot of the time you actually want to edit the layouts across many files. So we now have a bulk attribute editor as well, which allows you to do all that across maybe 10 or 15 or 20 DWGs and all their layouts and make very quick changes. And the great thing about this is that unlike Excel, we're not just talking about text data. So where you can see my name as the designer, it's not just my name as a piece of text. It's actually my contact record, which includes all my attributes, my email, anything that's relevant for the company, and that too could be embedded inside your title blocks and updated automatically. But, you know, we recognize that not everybody is going to be able to move over to the 12D Synergy solution for this. We would love everybody to be able to, but it's not always practical, and sometimes people will need to stick with their Excel file registers. So now we also have the capability to let you do that. So you can basically either keep updating your Excel file, and when in AutoCAD you can tell it to pull down the Excel file from 12D Synergy and update your title block, or alternatively you can tell the client and say, look, I'm going to pick a set of DWGs and an Excel register, and it will just go and update for you automatically without having to open CAD at all, which again just saves on a lot of time. Now Civil 3D has all of that functionality included, but it also adds data shortcuts support, which means that your data shortcuts will automatically be downloaded as per standard reference tracking and sharing and so on. So you get your data shortcuts that have been changed coming down when you open up your DWGs in Civil 3D. So that's it for CAD, and I'm now going to take you through the new workflow engine. Before I'll just start generally and talk about what we envisage workflows as, and then we'll have a look at what it looks like. So every business has any number of processes that people need to follow, and that can be at a high level, moving a particular project over many years through different phases and gates, or at a day-to-day level, say moving a particular DWG or drawing through the different stages of in progress and in review. And these processes tend to be made up of states, what state you can go to next, and what happens when you move from one state to another. So if you're moving from in progress to in review, do you need to make sure that the work was actually done? And then do you need to tell a manager that a review is now necessary? So in version 2 and version 3, in 12D Synergy, you could capture the state of your processes with attributes. You could attach a list attribute which described the different states to anything you wanted. That was great. The problem is that you could transition an attribute from any state to any state. So you could go from not started to done. You could skip the work, you could skip the review, and there was nothing to really stop you from doing that. The audit trail would show you that that's what had happened, but there was nothing to practically stop you from doing that. And if when you went from one state to another, there was nothing that could help you perform some set of operations. So if you needed to email somebody, you either had to script it or you just had to do it manually, which is generally error-prone. So the workflow engine was introduced in version 4 to make this process much simpler. So now with version 4, you can define workflows via attributes. And these attributes can be attached to files, folders, 12D model projects, jobs, and even task types. So pretty much any element within 12D Synergy can be bound by a particular workflow. And workflows are made up of states and transitions. So states are simple. They're what we talked about before. They define where you are in a process. Are you in progress or pending review? And the transitions define which states can be progressed from one to another. So can you move from pending review to in progress or on to approved? They also allow you to do a little bit more and define activities, conditions, and data capture. And I'll come back to that in a moment. This is what the UI looks like. We've tried to put something together that's very easy to do and very familiar. So you can basically sketch up a workflow of your states, draw some transitions between them, and that can be as simple as you go. And these transitions are then triggered by basically changing the attribute if it's a file at check-in time, or just changing it on the relevant job or folder, or changing the task itself. That then triggers the change from one state to another. But as I mentioned, you can also attach activities to your transitions. And these are the things that you might like to perform. So for example, maybe you want to assign the workflow to someone, then email them, maybe lock the file to prevent further edits, update a revision number, and there's a lot more, and we will take a look at all of the different activities that we have currently. And they're designed to be a little bit like building blocks. You can compose your activities in any order that you like, and they all just sort of run one after the other. You can also apply additional conditions. So these are additional rules on top of your transitions. So before, maybe you need to go from in review to in progress because the drawing wasn't quite up to scratch. Maybe you need to make sure that a review comment is added. You need to check that that's happened or that they've pointed it at a particular review markup file. You can also prompt for additional data capture. So if you do need to pop up and say, hey, look, what are the review comments? You can do that. Or you can say, can you point to a particular PDF markup file? So again, you've got lots of different options there to capture information as you go through your workflows. They're powerful and flexible, so they can be as simple as you like. You can just sketch up that flowchart, constrain the order of your states, and automatically just get a very simple but effective workflow. Or you can make it as powerful as you like. You can map out a full process with activities, conditions, and data capture. We've tried to make it very easy to use, and you'll see that from the demo, which I'm going to launch into now.
Okay, so here we are in 12D Synergy version 4, and we've got a bit of a typical job layout. We've got a design folder with a CAD folder where we're going to be demonstrating some of the workflows. Alright, so what I'm going to do is just add an existing drawing. Now 12D Synergy pops up because there are a couple of attributes that are required by this folder for DWGs. We have a revision and a CAD state attribute. Now, let's have a look at a couple of things. First of all, we can see that there is a workflow column here because there is a workflow bound to this particular attribute. So we can see the diagram here. I can have a look at it, any details I need to see, and we're in the start state. We haven't really started yet. And I can see straight away that I can only pick the not started state because I haven't really started work yet. Let's add that in. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to act as the user who's beginning work on this particular drawing. So let's check it out. Let's pretend I did some work, and now I can move it to in progress. I can't move it to any other state yet. It's not yet done. And again, I can see the workflow, so if I need to have a look at the diagram to understand what the stages are, I can. Let's check that back in. I did some work. Now, because I'm the person that said that I'm going to work on it, this is automatically assigned to me, and I can see this in my list of active workflows. So I can see what workflows I'm meant to work on and where they are and their current state. So I'm going to say, well, I've done my work now, it's ready for pending review. Okay. So now this has actually been automatically assigned to somebody else because they're doing the workflow now, they're the reviewer, it's their turn. So in fact, if we have a look over here, we can see it's in pending review. In fact, let's take a look at the file as well, and we can actually see it's now been locked for members of the role reviewer. So we've actually said nobody else can touch this file right now unless they're a reviewer. They're not allowed to check it out and make changes. So let's actually take a look at what's happening behind the scenes to drive this workflow, and we'll take a look at how the activities come into play. So first of all, you'll note that we have some file attributes here as I discussed. So really, if you have these types of CAD workflows, you can apply them to your job templates, so they're automatically set up for you when you start doing work. Let's edit this attribute, and we can see there's now a workflow button here. And this is the diagram we saw earlier. And we could take a look at this. If we click on this transition right here, we can see that when moving from not started to in progress, we are assigning the workflow to the current user and sending them an email. So as a designer, I get an email. We're also capturing who the designer was so that we can use that later. Once it goes from in progress to pending review, we're going to assign it to people in the role reviewer and then lock it for the role reviewer. Once we go back to in progress, we unlock the file, we increment the revision, and then we assign it back to the original designer. But there's also some data capture here because we want to make sure that the designer is informed about why it didn't progress through to the approve stage. That's obviously very important, so when the reviewer says back to in progress, they'll get a pop-up saying please fill out the review comments, which become attached to the file attribute. Now I mentioned that there's lots of different activities, so let's take a look at what is actually available. We've got lots of things for 12D Model, creating new projects, locking and unlocking projects and exports. Things for tasks, like you can automatically update your progress or states, maybe create new tasks, you can create jobs and export them. You can contact third-party web services, so if you need to tell SharePoint that something's happened, you can do that. You can assign the workflow, you could run your own batch program or script that you've written, you can send emails so you can have your own custom notifications, you can capture internal values, and the same goes for folders, locking and unlocking and exports. For files, you can do things like convert them to PDF, you could copy them somewhere, move them somewhere, create new files, publish them, rename files, add them to an issue set so it can be much easier to get data sets out the door, lock files, export them, and so on. And for attributes, you can increment attributes automatically, such as a revision, so perhaps moving from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or through the revisions of A, B, C, D, whatever suits you. And you can also set additional attributes. So there's lots in there, and as I mentioned, you can also plug in your own attributes if you have .NET scripting. The last thing I'd like to show you is what we call trigger workflows, and these are new in version 4 as well. We had lots of people ask us how they can perform certain operations which weren't currently available. So you kind of had to do most of it by scripting, but triggers are a way of bringing the power of the workflow activities onto standard operations. So we could say anytime a file is checked in this folder, or perhaps a new file is added, you could run a series of activities if a series of conditions are true. So all those activities we saw before are available, so perhaps every time a file is checked back into this folder, you might want to email someone. Or perhaps if it's moved into that folder, you might need to do something separate and start some process, create tasks, and so on. So there's lots of power there using this new workflow engine.
Alright, so I'll move on to the next feature, which is our mapping and spatial search capabilities. So in version 4, we've added the ability to display maps for your jobs, contacts, and companies. And this really gives you real context to your data. It brings it into the real world. And jobs can be displayed on maps based on their coordinates or geocoded addresses. So geocoding is the process of taking an address and converting it into a latitude and longitude. It all looks really great. The base maps have been provided by Esri and ArcGIS Online. And you can add additional layers on a global basis, on a per job basis, or a per user basis. So you can bring in different data sources that have relevant information based on the type of work that you're doing. And these layers can come from ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS servers. So many of the organizations out there will have an ArcGIS server available, or the web mapping tile service, which is an open format used over the internet to send out different image tiles. And lots of government groups are now making data sources available for consumption. So a lot of them will be using the WMTS. You can also use shape files and KML files, which might come out of, again, from different government groups or data providers, or you may be creating them yourselves from products like 12D Model or AutoCAD. And in fact, you can actually automatically draw layers from KML and shapefiles. So you can put them in a particular folder, you can tell the administrator where to look, and as soon as those files go in there, they'll start rendering on your map. So if you do have, say, a chain in 12D Model that can export some shapefiles from your data, that can get pushed up to 12D Synergy as well automatically. And that way, you might be showing the boundary of your job. Maybe you want to see how a particular alignment is progressing over time. All that information can be really useful for your data operators to see, and it can become quite dynamic. We also have the ability to do spatial search. So you can look for jobs and files based on their coordinates or addresses. You can draw a bounding polygon on a map, or you can search within a search radius from your current job or some other known point, and that can all then be visualized on a map. So you might say something like, I need to see all the jobs that are within 500 meters of my current job. So are you looking for conflicts or historical information? Or you might say, show me all the dial before you dig reports that belong to jobs near this job, because you might need to know if there's any important services nearby. So there's not much else to say about spatial search. It sort of sells itself in our demo. So I'll bring that up now, and we do have another video here, and hopefully it will render okay. And again, if it doesn't, please do let us know, and we'll send it out after the presentation.
Okay, here we are in 12D Synergy, and we're on the Find a Job screen. And I want to find a job by looking for its spatial coordinate. So I'm going to click on my address field here. Now I can type in a specific address, or I can look for it near another location, or I can do it on a map. So let's do it on a map. So you can define this default map view, so obviously it hones in on Australia or wherever most of your jobs are. But right now I'll just zoom in a little bit, and I know my job is somewhere around Circular Quay in Sydney. So let's draw a rectangle, click Set, and click Find. Will automatically open up the job if it finds only one, which it did. We can take a look at our map, and we can see, yep, there's my job. I can click on that, get some information about it, attributes, etc. But that's the job we're in. So this is defined by its address, which is of type address, or it could be done via a coordinate, but clearly it's better to type an address in most of the time. So here, this has been defined as being at 1 Macquarie Street, and this is automatically geocoded as soon as I type it in. Back on the map screen, I can show any surrounding jobs. So for example, I can click this one and see its details, any of its attributes, and I can open it if necessary. This is obviously really useful if you have any conflicting jobs or other pieces of information in the area that you want to see. Okay, so the other thing we can do here is, as we mentioned before, add relevant layers from other data sources. So what I'm going to do is add a layer from the New South Wales Government that they provide to the public. It's a map of various parcels. So this could be from shapefiles on your network, it could be from KML files, etc. Alright, so that's going to start loading now. You can see some orange outlines coming in. And as we zoom in, that layer will render on top. There we are. You can start to see some parcel details coming through. So obviously it really depends on what layers you have available. If you've got your own ArcGIS servers or other data sources that you are paying for, that will all be available, and the rendering will come down to what's delivered to you. So if you have environmental sources or other parcel sources or other points of interest, obviously all that can be displayed quite happily on the map, as well as any KMLs or shapefile that you might be pushing out of systems like AutoCAD or 12D Model. What else can we do? We can find jobs based on our current location. So let's go and do a job search. So we saw here we had the address before. This time I want to do a search based on my current job because I want to see if there's any jobs around my area. We did see that on the map, but let's go do it this way. So I can say, alright, I'm looking for any jobs within 10 kilometers. That might be a slight exaggeration for what you're going to do, but it shows it well. So I can say within 10 kilometers of my current job, and again that will display on the map. It'll show both options. And alternatively, I can see all my jobs that have come up in the search, so I can very easily see what's going on, which gives you a fair bit of information at first glance.
Alright, so version 4 is currently in beta, as I mentioned previously, but the release date is scheduled for our technical forum at the end of July, and hopefully we'll get to see you all there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Richie, for that presentation today. And yes, definitely everyone should be coming along to the technical forum this July, so you can see a lot more about all of this information and more. We've got our What's Coming in 12D Model 14 webinar coming up next week on Thursday. That's the 10th of May. So if you're interested in that one, then pop along and register for that now. If you need to contact us in the meantime, our details will be on the screen. That concludes our presentation for today. Thank you all for attending, and we hope to see you at future webinars.